The best way to describe Anthony, David, and Jan are that they're my brothers. I met Anthony at LA Fitness because I noticed that he had a Teamster's bag and his dad was a Teamster leader.
I'm a third generation son of labor. My grandmother worked in a factory. My mother and father were both Teamster members. I don't think there's a trade that I don't have a family member in.
What's so big for me coming from a union background is what affects one member affects the entire membership.
A lot of people can relate to the issues that individuals deal with. We pride ourselves on empathy.
The big value that's always instilled in you if you grow up in a union household is the importance of brotherhood. People that lean on each other, that rely on each other.
When we were building this business, having that background and knowing what matters most to the union members is really what we use to drive and build out Retiree First.
Stream on a Roku, Fire Stick, Google TV, or Apple TV. Now you can watch 6ABC 24/7 with the 6ABC Philadelphia streaming app.
And the big story on Action News.
Search 6ABC Philadelphia and start streaming today.
Moving into the month of September, welcome in everyone to another edition of the Labor and Energy Show with JDoc and Krause as we transition into what will be our fall next 4 months. JDoc here on the Labor and Energy Show. What a great year it's been so far, but we've got 4 great months planned for the remainder of 2023, starting with our very special program that we're going to do today here on the Labor and Energy Show.
Yeah, Joe, one of the things that we've been talking about for a long time here, and Sean Steffi, who's a member of our Energy Education Awareness Board, and of course a business agent with the Boilers Makers Union, has talked about it, is the jobs, with the living wages, the benefits that the traditional energy sector provides. So if you're working at a refinery, if you're working at one of the plants, you're typically, out of a labor union, you're making living wages, benefits. Okay, you can retire. You have all kinds of, opportunities to make a living wage for your family. One of the things that he talked about was the fact that he went to a job fair for renewable jobs. Okay,
I remember the conversation well.
Right. And we know renewables are coming into the market. We support that. But let's be real about that. You just not only can't you transition from traditional energy into renewables by clicking a button. Okay, and they must work together. Okay, no question about it. But you also can't sit there and go, well, if you're doing, the math saying, well, they're just transitioning into renewable jobs. Sorry. I think Sean said some of those jobs are $14 an hour, $15 an hour. Well, let me just say something. Today's show, we're going to have Gian Ricchezza of RetireeFirst on the broadcast, and they provide outstanding benefits for retirees. Okay. Gian's the chief business officer and co-founder of RetireeFirst. He's a third-generation union member or from a third-generation union household. And, what they do is they provide outstanding benefits to seniors. And they have a subsidiary called Labor First. And Labor First has been in the union market for a long time. And the reason it's important in this show is this is a retiree special, this broadcast. This is the benefits of working, for a company that is, a plant or, a refinery that hires union labor, okay? These are the types of programs and benefits that union members get. These are part of their, not to mention the living wages and their regular benefits. But when they retire, okay, there's programs like the one that RetireeFirst offers that makes it, the retirement a smooth transition. They have a ton of benefits, okay, and they're focused on group retiree benefits. They're Medicare experts. They understand the challenges and needs of the market, okay. They offer products and services to those that are not in unions, but they've originated in the union community, and our unions promote and offer their services. They work hand in hand with our unions and our retirees so that you can retire with dignity. You have the benefits to retire at meeting the healthcare needs as, again, they're Medicare experts. They coach you through everything. They provide the packages. It's just a beautiful thing.
Good stuff here on the Labor and Energy Show with JDoc and Krause. Quickly, JDoc, before we get into the first break, and then on the other side of the break, you'll bring in our very, very special guest on this week's edition of the Labor and Energy Show with JDoc and Krause. You are planning a trip to Erie, Pennsylvania this month, later in the month. I'm going to join you there as well. I'm super excited about it. Tell our viewing audience and our listening audience in 30 seconds why we're going to Erie, Pennsylvania.
Well, it's the Insight Convention. It's the Marcellus Shale's annual convention. Lots of great people are going to be there. Individuals that care deeply about our natural gas industry. A lot of professionals in the market, networking, sharing experiences, talking about the challenges that traditional energy folks, who, by the way, are as environmentally conscious as anybody we've known. Okay, but sharing their experiences and their resources so they can, secure and keep secure our energy independence in America, our energy security. It's going to be a great convention, the Insight Convention. Dave Callahan, by the way, and John Bain are going to be on next week's program. And so I can't wait to get to Erie. It's going to be a fantastic convention. And I do want to say one thing. This show today is a dual program. It's our Labor and Energy Show. And because retiree benefits are so important, this is also going to be our labor show for this week. So we couldn't be more excited to be creating and doing a retiree special and having our guests that we have.
The Labor and Energy Show with JDoc and Krause will get started after the commercial break. Back in a moment.
My name is Eleanor Northaft. My husband was in the union, Local 282. As I'm getting older, I'd like somebody to fight for me. So I called up RetireeFirst. Hi. And I got Brooke.
So nice to meet you. I'm Brooke. I'm an advocate at RetireeFirst. I've been working with Eleanor for 3 years. She was one of my first calls. I helped her with transportation to her doctors, getting her glasses reimbursed.
Oh, they are pretty fancy.
I'm basically just answering any questions she has.
And I always have a lot of questions.
Not too many.
I have a friend there. I love it because I can depend on her to help me out in any situation.
Oh, I'm excited.
She always comes through for me.
If you own a company and you're not producing a podcast, you're missing out. The public consumes messaging when they're ready. Join the professional podcast network of companies and let Jacob Media Partners put you in the podcast arena. Come to our professional studio, or we'll come to your place of business and professionally produce your company podcast. Call Jacob Media right now at 267-261-3428. 267-261-3428.
Do you stream on a Roku, a Fire Stick, Google TV, or Apple TV? Now you can watch 6ABC 24/7 with the 6ABC Philadelphia streaming app. Watch Action News live.
And the big story on Action News.
Plus special programming, breaking news, and severe weather updates.
Tremendous amounts of rain.
Always on. Always the news team you trust. Watch 6ABC 24/7 on your streaming device. Search 6ABC Philadelphia and start streaming today.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Labor and Energy Show with JDoc and Krause on the Jacob Media Network. We've got a fantastic broadcast. I'm ecstatic to bring in Gian Ricchezza, who's the co-founder, chief business officer at RetireeFirst. Gian, how are you, sir?
Joe, I'm doing great. Happy to be here. Big fan.
It's great to have you, and likewise, my friend. We have a lot to talk about, and I want to break this down, and I want to kind of Krausey and I were talking in the first segment. One of the things we're excited about, this is a retiree special, okay? And one of the great things about our labor community is that we get the opportunity to have a fantastic programs, resources, benefits, the whole deal. Of course, Retiree First is at the forefront there, and so we're going to talk a lot about what Retiree First is and what Retiree First does. But we're going to really focus at the beginning of our program on what Retiree First is and who Retiree First is. One of the things I'd like to say is the show's about the big picture and the programs, like I said, and the benefits that are available to all union families, that now everybody can benefit with. The show is also about the benefits that union members get, including the energy sector workers that are offered these programs on a daily basis. But the great thing about labor is the universal sentiment of sharing and helping those who may not be as fortunate, may not have a collective bargaining agreement. We do it every day. You see our union standing up for individuals who are not in unions. Fairness and really prosperity across the board. And so it's a big deal. Retiree First exudes that sentiment, okay? And we want to share what we have been benefiting for years with everybody. So the fact of the matter is that when it comes to labor and our members who have worked so hard for so many years, one of the things we most want is for our union members to be able to retire with dignity, okay? We want them to be able to retire first, okay, and then and as well as retire with dignity. And of course, again, Retiree First is one of the companies that makes that possible. And so this again is a retiree special. We're going to get a little bit up and close with Gian because we feel like it's really important to introduce the culture of a company that has impacted our community so amazingly over the years. So again, Gian Ricchezza is the Chief Business Officer and co-founder of Retiree First. And when I say up close and personal, I mean it. If you would, Gian, talk about where you grew up and the type of household you grew up in.
Yeah. Well, first, I just want to say you hit so many things on the head just talking about, labor and what we do, especially. But growing up, grew up in a union household. My grandfather was a Teamster truck driver. My father was an SEIU member and wound up being a president of a Philadelphia union. Growing up in that household, we looked at things differently. We understood, what unions are fighting for. We understood what's great about healthcare, what's great about pensions, what's great about fair working wages. We just viewed things very differently growing up, third generation like that. We saw things differently than maybe a couple other houses on our blocks. And we were always fighting for what's good for everybody. And all of those core values are really what we instilled from a grassroots approach when we were building Retiree First and Labor First. We wanted to take those core values of everything that's so special and everything that's so great about unions, and we wanted to build a company around that. And while we're focusing just on retiree populations, again, we're bringing all of the greatness of what unions are fighting for and what unions are doing. We're bringing that every day into what we're trying to accomplish here. Absolutely. And when we say Retiree First and Labor First, Labor First is a division of Retiree First. And so, and you put it so eloquently. And one of the things, and the reason I want to get a little personal is because I want people to understand who you are as one of the leaders there. We're going to talk about John Dolzak, who's the CEO of the company. By the way, again, from a union family whose father was a labor leader like yourself. But like your dad, when you talk about your father, and obviously he's got a special part in my heart, because when we launched the labor show years ago, okay, he was like a guest every 3 weeks. He helped him and Dennis Biondo helped keep us on the air.
But I want to introduce kind of the fabric of who you are, and this says a lot about yourself and John as well. As a labor leader, and you kind of hit it right on the head. So your dad was an outstanding labor leader, SEIU Local 32 BJ, president, district leader. But he spent his entire life representing and procuring fair wages, benefits, health care for his members. Okay, and you touched on that, but it must have had a profound effect on you. Can you share some insights on that particular point and how it has not influenced you personally, but also your career, moving forward?
Yeah, well, you hit on it right there. Very kind words. Thank you for my father. But I'm going to expand upon that. My father was one of the most hardworking individuals I've ever met. And growing up, watching what he did, not only for our family personally, but for his labor family. I mean, my dad fought the fight every single day, making sure all of his members were taken care of. And even before he was a labor leader, being within SEIU, 1201 and 32 BJ for 30, 40 years, even from a young age, it was always making sure whoever he's working with was taken care of, making sure they were safe. In his later years, when he was a labor leader, it was the same thing. It was making sure that every single member within that local was taken care of, whether it was healthcare related, whether it was pension related, whether it was any issues they were having, whether they needed to step away from their job. My father always fought for everybody. So from a personal standpoint, I saw a hardworking man who always wanted to help every single person he could. And from looking at it in the union lens, it was the same thing. He was a leader that wanted to make sure that his second family, the union, every one of the members of that union were always absolutely taken care of.
Well, it's interesting because let me throw this at you. So he was honored as the Ulico Man of the Year. Okay, he was 42 years in service. Okay,
Yeah.
as a leader at SEIU Local 32 BJ. But like my grandmother said, and what I'm getting at is, you didn't lick it from the bricks. You had an incredible, example of somebody who represented his members, and sometimes, like my father, in the same manner. You said second family, and it's always close when you got guys like our fathers. If you were a member of his union and the labor movement, and your dad was at the forefront of not only Local 32 BJ, but also the AFL-CIO. So if you were a member of any union or a member of the general public, he cared about you, and we had those conversations. And it is awesome to see that you have adopted and been impacted so much from those qualities, because we talk about a lot of them. You talk about solidarity, you talk about representation. Here, if I was to talk about your dad and yourself, John Dolzak, and the company, one of the great things that when you talk about Retiree First and wanting to take those union qualities that you, by the way, provide every day to our union members and share them with the general public, and provide them those same qualities to the general public, you're talking about loyalty, integrity, a desire to serve and represent individuals. And here's one that you and I heard since before we could walk: solidarity. Okay, uniting for a bigger cause. Okay, those were things that you and I learned on a daily basis. Now let me throw something at you.
Sure.
Your dad retired, but I'm going to take a shot at this and say your parents are clients, and let me ask you what that has been like. Number one, has he been a great resource? I know when I got into the labor movement and we started to do different programs, which we've done for a long time, and when we got into the media space, My father was a great resource, a lot of feedback. Talk about your father in that sense. Talk about as a resource when serving not only labor, but the general public, and as well as the feedback that both your parents give you at the highest level.
Yeah, it's such a good question, because the dynamic of growing up in a household, watching what he did, and now the role reversal in his retirement while we're building this and while we're now servicing retirees, to have him as both a supporter, and he's I want to say one of our largest supporters, but also as a client or a resource in the different avenues, it's really special. So from a resource perspective, when we were building this, obviously growing up in the union household, like we just talked about, we understood the dynamic of how to work with unions. We understand working with the trustees. We understand working in our world with benefits, working with the trustees and in most cases a fund administrator. And then we're working with the actual retirees for what we do. But understanding all those dynamics and having my father as a resource, and same with John and his father, to have them be a voice of reason, an advisor, it's the most invaluable thing in the world. They've been able to guide us and really help us go down the right road.
Right. And what's awesome about it is they're going to shoot from the hip. So,
oh yeah.
And believe me, it was a perfect case study when in other words, my dad was, driven. It's like a mirror image to your father and John's dad. But they're going to tell us what they really think. Okay.
Oh yeah.
And for the best interest of the company and for your clients and for you as a leader, that and so that you can provide the same service that you would for your parents, okay, to the general public and to union members. By the way, talk about those shooting from the hip type of conversations, and how sometimes they may, and this is obviously in the developmental process, but really on a daily basis. I'm sure you've gotten calls late at night and said, "Oh, by the way, I can't, this form is not coming up on a website," or whatever. I'm just throwing.
Yeah.
Talk about some of those situations.
Well, I'll say it. In our early years, I think he had trouble separating him being a trustee of his own fund. I feel like he kind of put us through the ringer of that, asking us the hard questions. Okay, right. well, who is servicing our retirees? When there's an issue, who are they calling? What are your hours? I feel like he put us through the same ringer just in conversation as if he was hiring us. And again, that was just my father. My father, with anything that had to do with his membership or generally anybody, he wanted to make sure that he was working with quality institutions, quality vendors, vendors that are going to, put their money where their mouth is, that are going to do what they say they were going to do. So yes, from the early years, he was always doing that. The beauty was in his years now, utilizing our plan and being one of our retired participants, him and my mother, it's phenomenal to hear the feedback now. With my mother, hey, I was at a pharmacy the other day, they were saying there was something wrong with my script. Okay, well, for her to work with one of our retiree advocates, to have the problem, fixed in whatever it was, 30 minutes, an hour, but to hear the feedback from them that, wow, that was so much easier than calling into a typical call center. There's no call prompts. I got a live person. I got the advocate I always work with. To hear that feedback is really, while it was very good feedback, it's still unfiltered. And I know that if they had a problem, they would immediately tell us. So to hear feedback in any way from a trusted source like my own parents is amazing. But then in these years now, to hear the good feedback, to hear, hey, that was really a pleasurable experience, not having to sit on hold for 15, 20 minutes when I was having an actual problem. To get feedback from a trusted source like that we couldn't ask for anymore.
And what's awesome is that, and I've heard a ton of feedback. I happen to know a couple of your advocates, and the passion they have, and the fact that they love their jobs and they love what they do. Okay, and we're going to get into that into what the advocates do. But that is a great example of getting great feedback, being honest with yourself, wanting to be the best company to provide, the services, the same services that you provide in the same manner, okay, to your parents, to your father, who was like a great labor leader, and somebody whose standards are, through the roof, to the union members, to the general public, to union families, is such a benefit to the member. I mean, to the client, because I'm going to take a shot and say, I'm sure your father has called just the advocacy and spoke to one of your advocates without calling and saying, "Oh, by the way, my son is Gian Ricchezza."
No doubt about it.
and by the way, and that's a beautiful thing, because it tells people and it shows them that they're getting the same, that you're treating them like family. And it's so important, because we're going to get into retirees and their needs and their challenges. But before we go to break, I'd like to kind of focus a little bit on your professional background, if you would, your experience in the healthcare benefits industry.
Sure.
Talk about that a little bit.
No doubt. Again, growing up in our home, I was around it my entire life. So understanding all the different fights that go on within a union, what they're fighting for. Again, we talked about it, the different areas of a fund, the benefits area, the financial or pension area, the day-to-day contracts that they're working through. So growing up, living all of that. But in school, I actually I studied finance. And after that, in finance, I was working with union participants still. But while I was life and health insurance licensed through that after school, when we all met here and I met John, that was a big piece of what we were doing here. So prior to Labor First and Retiree First, it was finance and it was working in a fund office. Understanding, and I was always more on the health and benefits side of a fund office, but understanding, what active participants, what issues they have. How are those issues different from the retired participants? When retired participants reach Medicare eligibility, what is the function and what are the differences from a union member across the journey of while they're working to when they're working, or when they retire, but they're not yet Medicare eligible? Understanding the different areas of what affects a union member, as well as understanding the union side, the decisions they need to make on how they're managing that health fund. It's so key into what we're doing today. But what I'll say is, I kind of grew up in that. And just like yourself, you've heard it all through the years, and whether you were directly working in that situation, just understanding the topics they were going through and hearing the meetings he was going through. From a very young age, we were involved, but then also through school and immediately following school, hands-on working when it was very helpful.
And when you lay it out, we only have a minute to the break. So why don't we do this? Why don't we go to the break? Okay. And, we have so much more to talk about. We're going to get into the retirees and their needs and their challenges on a daily basis. We're going to talk about John Dolzak, who is your partner and the CEO of RetireeFirst. And of course, we're going to talk about the company and the services and all them. We're going to have more from the Labor and Energy Show with JDoc and Krausey when we come back.
My name is Eleanor Northaft. My husband was in the union, Local 282. And as I'm getting older, I would like somebody to fight for me. So I called up RetireeFirst.
Hi.
And I got Brooke.
So nice to meet you.
I'm Brooke. I'm an advocate at RetireeFirst. I've been working with Eleanor for 3 years. She was one of my first calls. I helped her with transportation to her doctors, getting her glasses reimbursed.
Oh, they are pretty fancy.
I'm basically just answering any questions she has.
And I always have a lot of questions.
Not too many.
I have a friend there. I love it because I can depend on her to help me out in any situation.
Oh, I'm excited.
She always comes through for me.
If you own a company and you're not producing a podcast, you're missing out. The public consumes messaging when they're ready. Join the professional podcast network of companies and let Jacob Media Partners put you in the podcast arena. Come to our professional studio, or we'll come to your place of business and professionally produce your company podcast. Call Jacob Media right now at 267-261-3428. 267-261-3428.
Do you stream on a Roku, a Fire Stick, Google TV, or Apple TV? Now you can watch 6ABC 24/7 with the 6ABC Philadelphia streaming app. Watch Action News live.
And the big story on Action News.
Plus special programming, breaking news, and severe weather updates.
Tremendous amounts of rain.
Always on. Always the news team you trust. Watch 6ABC 24/7 on your streaming device. Search 6ABC Philadelphia and start streaming today.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Labor and Energy Show here on the Jacob Media Network. We've got a fantastic show. This is a retiree special. Gian Ricchezza, co-founder, chief business officer for RetireeFirst, is our guest. Gian, we've talked a lot about obviously your background and the what RetireeFirst is about, and providing that labor influence, but also that labor program to the general public. Okay. Mm-hmm. And it's such a great analogy, wanting to take that union program and offer it, obviously still to unions and union members, but keeping that same quality and level of expertise and service to the union community. We're going to get into the retirees, but let's talk about John Dolzak. Now, John and I go way back, a lot of synergy. Both our fathers, same as yours. Talk about that, because when knowing you and your background and John's, there's so much synergy there. First of all, when did that come together?
So oddly enough, we met at a wedding, but you have to understand, you're hitting right on it. When you grow up in this world that we grew up, we had immediate, common interests. So from the first time John and I met, it was, hey, growing up, we did this, and what are you doing for work? And here's what I'm doing. And with the company, when we were building this, I got to say, John's passion, John,
oh yeah,
his passion is one of his strongest attributes. And as we were building this and the focus on retirees, he brings that passion every day into what we're doing. And that's what our whole company's about. I know we'll talk about it in a little more depth, but everyone within this company is waking up every single day, wanting to get here, wanting to help retirees, wanting to help better their experience. And it's why we have such a special team here. But John and I, when we met, it was, we were both aligned with how we grew up. But more importantly, what we wanted to do in the future and what we wanted to build and how we wanted to build it.
Oh, I mean, by the way, that's incredible. First of all, I didn't know that at a wedding.
Oh yeah.
Whoever got married, you should, send them a nice card and say, hey, thanks for the invite.
No doubt about it. Well, oddly enough, it was Dennis Biondo. So
Dennis Biondo.
It was at Dennis's meeting. So you already touched on that, and absolutely, there's an appreciation level, and such good things came out of that. So that's why we really do it in the union world. Everyone knows each other, and that's how this family, we like to call it, that's how it grows.
Oh, that's awesome. Dennis is a great friend, and like I said, him and your dad were very tied at the hip in the union and SEIU Local 32. BJ, both great labor leaders, but again, they kept us afloat, when we started the labor show 9 years ago. Having said that, let's get into retirees, okay? And let's first of all, who are your clients, okay? Who are the people you service every day?
Yeah. So where we started, we were trying to talk to, educate, and work with every single labor union out there. Because unlike some of the other sectors, if you look at the public sector and private sector, which we service everyone, but where we started was labor. And the reason is historically, labor has really made the commitment to cover their retirees in both the pension plans that they have, but also in their healthcare benefits. And not all sectors dedicate healthcare benefits to their retired participants, whether they're non-Medicare eligible or when they are Medicare eligible. So that was really the start of where we were trying to find business. We were knocking on unions' doors, explaining what we were doing. So we always like to say that the client is always let's call it the plan sponsor, whether it's the union, whether it's a public sector entity or a private sector entity. The client is who we're going after. But who we really want to service, and the most important key in all this, is the actual retiree. And we want to make sure that a retiree's journey within their healthcare plans is a effortless and stress-free environment. And that's really what we're trying to accomplish. So while the group they worked for is our client, we are truly working for the retirees and making sure that they know what we're here to do.
What's interesting is, so when John first started Labor First, which is a division of Retiree First, I believe my father was one of his first clients. Okay?
Absolutely.
Okay, so what's amazing about that is, if our listeners knew my dad and what a perfectionist he was, right? John not only did such a great job in the seed of the company, okay, with the Ironworkers Local 401, and this is just, man, I can't. When listeners are listening to this, my dad was one of the most demanding guys on the planet. You wouldn't last 2 days, and thinking about, and the reason it's so important to explain this to all of our, all of the Retiree First clients and the general public is, when a labor leader puts their faith in a company, okay, and they go and they take a shot, their entire reputation is on the line. Okay,
No doubt.
You might want to, we want our retirees to retire with dignity and have all the best benefits, but we all know this: the retirees can be some of the most vocal, okay, people around. They're no longer worried about working; they worried about their benefits. So you're laying a lot on the line. John not only got the account, okay, but my father gave him an office in the union. And
that's right.
So to say that, the magnitude of what that about, and surrounding himself with great people like yourself, okay, and the team that you have there, okay, the expectations were through the roof. So when we talked about initially, it was union retirees, okay, who very vocal, okay, they have no filter at all. Okay, and taking that step and starting with the highest level of clients accountability across the board and taking it to the next level is huge. So having said that, okay, let's talk about the needs of retirees and the challenges they face on a daily basis. Elaborate, if you would, Gian.
Sure. And if you're okay, first, I just want to take a second to talk about your father and the visionary he was. Just a couple points in here. Your father looking out for his membership with that supplemental fund, which is where we were brought in to help out with the retirees, is just, that was above and beyond. And then talking further about, a labor leader like your father, like my father, when they bring in a vendor to work with their membership, it's their reputation. We say this all the time. In labor, retirees can still vote in most unions. So you have that aspect. You're making decisions for participants, not just your active participants, but your retired participants who still have a say. And when we talk about them having a say, I mean, this, a member will show up at your father's, back then, and my father's back in the day as well. They'll show up knocking on the door and say, "Hey, what's going on here? I don't like this."
Oh yeah, you're accountable. They're accountable. They're accountable.
That's exactly right. Accountable. Their reputations were on the line. So I really wanted to hit that further because it's so true.
And I appreciate it. And by the way, we understand that because of the dynamics. Obviously, we see it firsthand. But let's talk about those challenges that the retirees face.
So for our retirees, the first thing we need to understand is most of our retirees are on fixed incomes. And when it comes to the rising costs of healthcare, healthcare has become a major pain point for most people across the country, union or not. So for our union participants, it's educating all of the changes that they need to understand as they make their journey through their working careers into retirement. And then more importantly for us, when they reach Medicare eligibility, because that's who we're really working with. So some of the challenges they have, we find that our Medicare participants are utilizing their benefits, maybe more than a 25 or 30-year-old active working participant. So right there, they're utilizing these benefits more, which are going to lead to questions. And unfortunately, in healthcare today, sometimes they're going to have some hurdles to get over. And so when we're aiming to please them, aiming to service them, aiming to advocate for them, we're taking everything into account. And we know when they call us, if there's an issue, it's the most important issue that's going on in their lives. Trying to tell somebody they can't see a doctor they need to see, or they can't get a drug that a doctor prescribed them. We are making sure that those retirees have the advocates that we have here fighting for them and doing, back to our grassroots in growing up in labor households, doing what our fathers did, fighting for every single one of our participants, making sure they're getting what they need. And so to more specifically answer your question, we're dealing with any of their healthcare related items. I touched on a couple, but if they're having trouble at a pharmacy getting a prescription, if they're having trouble getting a drug that might not be on their drug formulary, if they get a bill in the mail that they're questioning, hey, I'm not sure if I owe this. I thought my copay was X. They call into our team of retiree advocates, and our advocates, they take over everything from there. And again, when they call in, sorry.
Oh, no. Well, and I want to get into that. In other words, let's kind of officially, in a sense, list the services that RetireeFirst provides, and offers. You're a retiree benefits manager focused on group retiree benefits. Okay. What is that?
Sure. So we talked a little bit earlier, any entity out there. So if we look at LaborFirst and targeting unions, any union out there that is covering their retired participants in some form or fashion, if they have a healthcare benefit, that's who we're aiming to talk to. Because from the union perspective, we have so many groups now and so many retired lives, we can help the union make sure they're in the right product. And when I say product, whether it's a Medicare Advantage plan, a Part D drug plan, or Medicare supplement, we're going to make sure that they're in the right plan or product that the group needs to be in. And because of our lives and how many groups we have, we're most likely going to save them money. And we're going to make sure contractually they're getting the best deal for their health fund. But then when it comes to the retirees, we want to make sure that the retirees are serviced absolutely end to end in any questions they may have, utilizing their benefits. Just if they want to use it, they want to see some type of doctor, navigating Medicare, which is a confusing thing. For the first time ever, they need to enroll in Medicare and make sure that they're handled there. So our company serves the clients in making sure they're making the best decisions for their health fund. But not more importantly, but we put a lot of emphasis on the actual retiree and making sure that they feel not only serviced, Joe, but almost over-serviced. We are there for anything they need.
And so let's touch on the Medicare expertise and the importance of that, because it can be incredibly confusing, and there could be penalties with that if you don't do it right. I mean, there can be issues. Talk about that.
Right. So when you become Medicare eligible, whether it's 65 or if you're younger through if you're disabled Medicare eligible, there are things you need to work through. It's Medicare Part A, Medicare Part B. It is navigating them pulling the premium that you need to pay to enroll in that Medicare through your Social Security. So it's not as if everyone's taught this every day. So what our company helps for a client level to, again, help the retiree, but it's the education piece. It's making sure that the union feels supported in helping their retirees, that when they go to retire or when they're becoming Medicare eligible, that there's a plan in place, that we are helping guide the retiree through, that complex nature of enrolling in Medicare, enrolling in the plan, making sure that they're not going to be penalized for not having a Part D drug plan. That's where our focus is making sure that from the union down or the retiree up, however way you want to look at it, that everyone is being serviced and educated, and we're there for every step of the way.
So let's talk about the client advocates, okay, and expectations, okay. At the grassroots level, let's talk about the client advocates and how they help and serve the clients, as a trained team, educated and experienced on everything we're talking about.
Yeah. So from a grassroots approach, when we were building this, we realized that our union participants are used to calling into their health fund office. They're calling in, they're talking to people they know. So we wanted to build that same exact environment. So when we bring a group on, they have a dedicated team of retiree advocates. So when those retirees call in, if on the first call they work with Ashley, first, our system on their next call tries to get them back to Ashley. But above all, they're working with a team of advocates that understand their plan, know who they are. When a retiree calls in, there's no call prompts, there's no wait times. Our call to answer is like 14 seconds. So our retired participants know when they're calling in, they're going to get an advocate who is, again, there to help them in any aspect. But Joe, I'll make you laugh more. Some of our retired participants, they build relationships with our advocates, and sometimes they call in.
Well, I was going to say the commercial that we air on during the breaks, one of the most heartfelt commercials, and you can see that's not, that isn't made up. Those aren't two paid actors. It says a lot.
Eleanor is from one of our first locals, again, similar to your father's local. That group has been with us for a while. And you see in what Eleanor was saying and Brooke, our retiree advocate, and working with her, that it goes beyond just them calling in and trying to get an issue fixed. It really turns into, what can we do above and beyond? And then a relationship is born. And here in our office, we have a 50-foot member appreciation wall of all of the letters that come in from our retirees thanking our retiree advocates. I can't tell you how often flowers are delivered for our retiree advocates. Our advocates are there to serve the retirees, but what happens over a period of time is they really build and gain a rapport with the retirees, and it's just a great relationship where now moving forward, they feel very comfortable calling in and talking through an issue they're having, getting that issue resolved. That's really the beautiful thing we have going here.
And let's talk about it from the from the organization standpoint. These are calls that used to go to the health and welfares. Nobody could be happier than the health and welfares, that because these are a lot of specialized questions, right? And like we both said, a lot of retirees there's no filter, and there's not a time limit there. Okay, they're going to be on that call. Let's talk about and by the way, we only have 2 minutes, okay? But let's talk about it from that standpoint, because it's a great benefit to the organization.
No doubt. So there are definitely health and welfare funds, like you mentioned, that can't take the volume of calls or are happy to have us working with them on that. But also, we're trying to make sure that the retired participants aren't calling into the insurance carrier either. And they're not just another number calling into, one of 7 different call centers. We want them to call us. And you really touched on it. We don't care how long our advocates are on the phone with a retiree. We are not the type of organization that, wants to rush to get our team off of a call and get to the next one. Absolutely not at all. We want to take the time. We want to make sure our retired participants feel heard, that their issues get resolved. That's who we are as a company.
Okay. I mean, it's I'm so proud of what you guys do on a daily basis. I'm happy too, because I'm kind of getting to that area age-wise. So I'll tell your dad I'll be joining him fairly soon.
There you go.
Contact information, if you will. Well, first of all, if anybody wants more information on the company, they can go to the website at retireefirst.com. But
Yes.
let's also contact information for organizations, unions, if they want to, get in touch.
Yeah. So on our website, reach out. There's an info email. The phone number's all over there. Get in touch with us absolutely any way you can. We're happy to answer absolutely any questions. If you're a union or you are a company, we'll help you in that aspect. If you're one of our retirees, call in. We'll make sure you get to one of our advocates. But get to our website, call into our numbers, email us. However you need to get in touch with us, we want to talk to you. We want to help. We want to be a resource for you guys.
And you guys will be at the International Foundation of Employee Benefit Plans in Boston on October 1st. And so, organizations can catch us there. Gian Ricchezza, I want to thank you so much for being our guest on this retiree special, shedding light on what's available to not only our labor community, but to all retirees and organizations out there. What you, John Dolzak, and the entire team, I want a little shout out to Stephanie Dougherty, who helped from RetireeFirst for putting this together. We couldn't be happier and more appreciative for what you guys do on a daily basis.
Joe, thank you for that. Thank you for the time on the show, and thanks for everything you're doing for labor. The voice you guys have, it's amazing. We're happy to support. I'm happy to be here today, and just a giant thank you to you guys.
Awesome, and a shout out to my great friend George Ricchezza. You raised an incredible young man, and there are so many people benefiting from it. We're going to have more from the Labor and Energy Show with JDoc and Krause in just a minute.
My name is Eleanor Northaft. My husband was in the union, Local 282. And as I'm getting older, I'd like somebody to fight for me. So I called up RetireeFirst.
Hi.
And I got Brooke.
So nice to meet you.
I'm Brooke. I'm an advocate at RetireeFirst. I've been working with Eleanor for 3 years. She was one of my first calls. I helped her with transportation to her doctors, getting her glasses reimbursed.
Oh, they are pretty fancy.
I'm basically just answering any questions she has.
And I always have a lot of questions.
Not too many.
I have a friend there. I love it because I can depend on her to help me out in any situation.
Oh, I'm excited.
She always comes through for me.
If you own a company and you're not producing a podcast, you're missing out. The public consumes messaging when they're ready. Join the professional podcast network of companies and let Jacob Media Partners put you in the podcast arena. Come to our professional studio, or we'll come to your place of business and professionally produce your company podcast. Call Jacob Media right now at 267-261-3428. 267-261-3428.
Do you stream on a Roku, a Fire Stick, Google TV, or Apple TV? Now you can watch 6ABC 24/7 with the 6ABC Philadelphia streaming app. Watch Action News live.
And the big story on Action News.
Plus special programming, breaking news, and severe weather updates.
Tremendous amounts of rain.
Always on, always the news team you trust. Watch 6ABC 24/7 on your streaming device. Search 6ABC Philadelphia and start streaming today.
Here on the Labor and Energy Show with JDoc and Krause. We ran a little long today on our conversation, JDoc, so we're a little short on terms of our ability to close the show. I have to ask you to put a synopsis or a summary together in about 45 seconds, just so we can wrap up and be efficient to time. But a very good interview today, very informative. And again, if you've missed any of today's program, you can certainly download the podcast, go to Apple or Spotify, and search the Labor and Energy Show. JDoc, last word to you, brother.
I want to thank Gian Ricchezza for being our special guest on our retiree special. Special shout out to John Dolzak, who is, the founder and the CEO of RetireeFirst. Labor First is a division of RetireeFirst. But listen, I hope everybody was educated and understands the great retiree benefits that are available through RetireeFirst. Certainly, you can find them on their website and at the retireefirst.com. And we're so excited to be offering these benefits and offering these educational opportunities to all of our listeners out there, and also that shows them the value of unions, of union labor, and our traditional energy sector, because we want to offer benefits that allow everybody to retire with dignity.
Great stuff today on the Labor and Energy Show with JDoc and Krause. Don't forget to stay with us over the next 4 months. We've got a tremendous end of 2023 planned for you, including some recorded conversation from our trip to Erie. We'll talk to a lot of leaders that are in attendance at that event, and we will continue to educate the public, which is our priority based on the support that we get from PBF. We thank everybody for giving us that ability to educate. JDoc, great job by you today, and great job by putting the Labor and Energy Show together. On behalf of my partner, JDoc, I'm Joe Krause. See you next time, everybody.
The best way to describe Anthony, David, and Gian that they're my brothers. I met Anthony at LA Fitness because I noticed that he had a Teamster's bag, and his dad was a Teamster leader.
I'm a third generation son of labor. My grandmother worked in a factory. My mother and father were both Teamster members. I don't think there's a trade that I don't have a family member in.
What's so big for me coming from a union background is what affects one member affects the entire membership.
A lot of people can relate to the issues that individuals deal with. We pride ourselves on empathy.
The big value that's always instilled in you if you grow up in a union household is the importance of brotherhood. People that lean on each other, that rely on each other.
When we were building this business, having that background and knowing what matters most to the union members is really what we use to drive and build out Retiree First.
If you own a company and you're not producing a podcast, you're missing out. The public consumes messaging when they're ready. Join the professional podcast network of companies and let Jacob Media Partners put you in the podcast arena. Come to our professional studio, or we'll come to your place of business and professionally produce your company podcast. Call Jacob Media right now at 267-261-3428. 267-261-3428.
Do you stream on a Roku, a Fire Stick, Google TV, or Apple TV? Now you can watch 6ABC 24/7 with the 6ABC Philadelphia streaming app. Watch Action News live.
And the big story on Action News.
Plus special programming, breaking news, and severe weather updates.
Tremendous amounts of rain.
Always on. Always the news team you trust. Watch 6ABC 24/7 on your streaming device. Search 6ABC Philadelphia and start streaming today.